Everything is worse at 3 a.m. There's that to-do list piling up, or that early clinic you've got to make, or that thing you said to your colleague that you just can't stop thinking about. These worries just pile up at night, and that's on top of that cheeky glass of wine late at night, or that piece of cheese, or that doom scrolling when all you meant to do was set your alarm. And we're constantly told how important getting a good night's sleep is, particularly in a high-stakes job. But it's easier said than done, and it does feel like something we don't have much control over. So this week in our Summer Wellbeing series, I'm joined by Dr. Steve Smith. He's a GP and a self-certified insomniac, and he's developed some training to help people get a good night's sleep. Now, Steve has worked extensively in the field of substance abuse, and he's previously been on the podcast talking about the importance of forgiveness, particularly as a mental health strategy. And he's found some unexpected connections between substance abuse and sleep, and he's sharing some of his tried and tested strategies, as well as some new and surprising ways to improve both the quality and the quantity of your sleep. Spoiler alert, it's not just about REM sleep. So grab yourself a hot, milky drink, preferably without any caffeine if it's after midday, and enjoy this conversation with Steve. And if you want to start putting his advice into practice, stay tuned for an exclusive discount on his course, especially for Frog listeners.
Well, hello, I'm Dr. Steve Smith. I am a GP, and for 2 or 3 decades, I've been working as a GP specialist in substance misuse, in addiction. But in more recent years, I have been working on the subjects of sleep and have a great interest in sleep. And I'm currently working in a clinic in North London, where a big part of our work is helping people with sleep issues.
Great to have you back on the podcast, Steve, because you've been here before talking about forgiveness.
Coming up to a year ago.
Gosh. And it's interesting because that was a big part of your work with people with addiction as well. You found forgiveness was a real thing that people needed to sort of get to the bottom of. Is that the same reason why you got into sleep and stuff like that?
I think sleep is very much a big part of why people are addicted to substances. But one of my main interests in sleep is my own personal journey with insomnia. So I've described myself as having been a certified insomniac. So that's been a big motivator to study it more, to look into it, and done a lot of reading, attended seminars, and so on. So that's so it's been professional and personal interest in sleep.
How long have you been a certified professional insomniac for? So when did your issues with sleeping first start?
I was actually thinking about that because I've thought about it a number of times. I really cannot remember having any sleep issues as a child. But what I really, really remember remember having sleep problems was as a junior doctor. As you know, we used to work sometimes these ridiculously long shifts. I remember starting on a Saturday morning when I did a 1 in 4 weekends, and I was always on call on Monday nights. So I would start on Saturday morning, doing a busy surgical job where there were always things going on during the night, or very often. And then I'd go home on Tuesday, 5 o'clock, crash. And would you believe it? I was on call Mondays and Wednesdays. And so then I'd work from Wednesday morning till Thursday evening. So it was just an exhausting job. And then when there were opportunities to sleep, whether it was between cases in the middle of the night or when I got home, I was just so often obsessed with, I've got to sleep, that I absolutely had good doses of sleep anxiety. So yeah, it's been on and off over the years, but I really understand the issue of sleep anxiety, which is one of the major causes of insomnia.
Because you don't often hear much about that, do you, when people talk about sleep? They talk about sleep hygiene. Yeah, we all
Absolutely.
pretty much know what to do. But the sleep anxiety, and it exists. I'm literally thinking about 3 times in the last month where I've had exactly that, where my daughter had an operation on her foot. So we're having to get up really early to get her to the minibus to get to school. I'm not sleeping so well because I'm waking up and checking my clock. I was doing a keynote talk in Edinburgh. It started at 8:45. I had a really nice hotel. It was really comfortable. I hardly slept a wink that night because I was so worried about missing my alarm to get up to do that. It was just a bit mad, really. So is sleep anxiety something that happens to everybody or just a few people, or it happens to most people occasionally, but there are a few people that get it really bad?
What I would say is it's a major cause of anxiety, and it's not totally, but it's largely overlooked and poorly understood. And I think also by medical professionals, by healthcare professionals. And I was at St. George's Hospital in the 1980s, actually the 70s, let's be honest, where I was at medical school. And it was a particular medical school where sleep was taught probably better than other places, but we didn't have very much about sleep at all. And the only lesson, the only lecture I can remember on sleep was sleep hygiene. That's all we were told. Yeah, tell them, not to drink too much coffee and maybe have a milky drink and exercise here and there and all those things that maybe we can talk about, because they are important. I mean, they are part of what people need to tackle, but it's not the most important thing. It's the way I look at how to help people is there's various steps in how I help people, and one of them is sleep hygiene, which needs to be looked at early on. But absolutely, it's the anxiety of not sleeping that is what really keeps people awake. And people, time and time again, especially when I'm working in an addiction clinic, people just don't get that, because they've taught themselves that it's substances that they need to get through life. And of course, that's true for so many people, whether or not they go to a drug clinic. And they've learned that, if I take this, I sleep well, and if I don't take it, I don't sleep. And so they take a lot of persuading that anxiety is an issue. And that's the clinic I'm working in now. I'm working in a clinic now where we're helping people manage prescribed benzos, and opiates and Z drugs. And it's a big lesson for them to learn that it's sleep anxiety, because so often when people have been taking a substance, whether it's prescribed or it's illicit or whatever, the substance has actually stopped working a long time ago. It's lost its benefit, but it's the reason why they don't sleep when they don't take their whatever it is, their cannabis, alcohol, promethazine, whatever it is. The reason why sleep is poor is because they're thinking, oh no, I haven't had my sleeping tablet, I'm not going to sleep well.
Like most things in life, the root is all up here, isn't it? It's the way we think about everything and what's going for us, and those underlying concerns and worries.
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard you talking about things at different times in relation to stress management and so on. The whole chimp paradox, the limbic system is a big part of sleep management.
And it's really interesting because I must say, I haven't really heard about it before. So obviously there's a great book, Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep, fantastic, and recommend
it really is. Totally
everybody I think every single healthcare professional should read that, not just for themselves, but so they can advise their patients about it. So quick summary. Let's just give it like a 1 minute summary, Steve, of why we need to sleep. So I want to go on and talk more about sleep anxiety, but let's get out of the way, first of all, why sleep is important. And number two, quick, 30-second summary of sleep hygiene. Because I think, we just need to know it. And then let's look at the thing that actually really makes a difference. So why is sleep important? Quick summary.
Oh my goodness, that's such a big subject. But okay, it's so important for our life, for our health, for our well-being, for creativity. So just quickly, for our life, did you know that if you consistently sleep less than 5 hours at night, your risk of death from all causes is 15% greater? If you consistently sleep less than 6 hours at night, you have a 30% increased risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. One is 55% more likely to be obese if you're sleeping less than 7 hours, actually, compared to somebody who sleeps more than 7 hours. One really big deal, and this is a really big deal for healthcare professionals who are managing people in general practice. I really like to stress that mental health and insomnia are a two-way street, because we were all taught in medical school that somebody presents with insomnia, oh, they must be depressed, probably depressed. And that was certainly how I used to think. I mean, that's how I understood most GPs thinking. They're not sleeping. Well, why are they depressed? Let's put them on antidepressants. And what's really interesting is how many people are anxious or depressed, primarily because they've got insomnia.
Gosh.
And and that's so overlooked by so many. And they are depressed, and so the antidepressants will probably help. But the primary issue is the insomnia. Memory, dementia. So we detox. Our brains are busy detoxing ourselves of beta amyloid, the protein that's associated with Alzheimer's in the brain during the night. And there are so many stories of people just not sleeping. And obviously dementia is common anyway, but it's very closely linked with poor sleep. I mean, I remember in the 1980s, I don't know, there might be others listening to this remembering about the power of power naps. You could sleep, you could rest for 10 minutes and have the equivalent of a 2 hours sleep. And that just seemed amazing. And I think that's how people like Margaret Thatcher got by, just by working all night, having these little power naps and functioning, but massive correlation with memory loss and dementia. So are those a few good reasons?
Gosh, that's good enough for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And just productivity, creativity, they're massive as well.
Yeah. It's just it's the laying down of memories and the solving of problems and things that particularly happens in your REM sleep, doesn't it? And I think
absolutely
for me, yes, let's get rid of all the amyloid. But actually, if you want to have an impact, if you want to solve problems and feel better, you need a good night's sleep. So there's stuff we can do. And if I was to list sleep hygiene if I remember back to my GP days, it's make the bedroom really dark, make it coldish, not too cold, but not too hot either. Don't have any caffeine from midday because the half-life of caffeine is 6 hours. So you'll still have a quarter of the strong cup of coffee you had in your
8 hours,
system.
but whatever.
8 hours, gosh, even more.
Or whatever. Yeah, it's long anyway.
So avoid caffeine and chocolate and stuff like that before bed. Sound, go somewhere quiet. Go to bed at the same time. Get up at the same time.
Absolutely, yes. We are really conditionable creatures. We all know Pavlov's dogs, and we can do so much to condition ourselves to sleep well. And so you mentioned things about the bedroom, have the bedroom cool, dark, have a good sleeping environment, but have the bedroom only associated in your mind with sleep and intimacy and nothing else. No scrolling through and get your phone away from your bedroom. Oh my goodness. But, when people are watching TV, even reading, studying, working, scrolling through Instagram, whatever it may be in the bedroom, we condition ourselves to be awake. And that's not even taking into account the blue light, which maybe is also not insignificant. So all those things that we've discussed, really important. You mentioned rhythm. And I think I like to consider rhythm as such a massive subject in itself, that it warrants a whole discussion, a whole course, a whole session, because it's so important. Yes, let's get up consistently. Get up in a good time in the morning and go to bed at the same time, because then do we want to talk about the sleep drive? But there's two things that are important for sleep drive, and one of them is circadian rhythm, and that's massive. And so if we can be consistent in when we're getting up, that will really help. And then conversely, when we go to bed. But also resting, that's I like to say the fight for the night is fought in the day, and so we need to have a rhythm of rest during the day as well as during the night and during the week. I've heard you talking about rest and to rest during the day, to rest during the week, have a day off during the week, to have a vacation, to have a holiday during the year. I mean, I think people who don't have a holiday, they have the same increased cardiovascular risk as people who sleep badly, and there's probably a massive overlap. You're 30% more likely to have a cardiovascular event if you're somebody who doesn't have a holiday. Well, if you're somebody who doesn't have a holiday, you're probably a personality type that's not going to sleep. So there's probably different factors at play there. But yeah, lots of things under the heading of sleep hygiene. But they're all important. But I think rhythm is massive.
Gosh, there's a lot there that I'm quite interested in, actually. Well, first of all, if I am quite knackered, I've had a few late nights, are you saying that actually it would be better for me to get up at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning than to stay in bed for those 2 extra hours if I can till 9 o'clock? Well,
there's something called social jet lag, and I can't remember the name of the psychologist. It's a German psychologist who coined that phrase. Now, if it's one off, then yeah, sure, that's fine. You had a late night, and yeah, we'll sleep in. If it's a regular pattern, which it is for a lot of people, it's a massive problem for a lot of people. They work really hard during the week. They get up at 5 a.m, 4 a.m, whatever time it is, go to work. And then it's TGIF, thank God it's Friday, party Friday, late nights, watching movies. Same again Saturday. And you've just shifted your body clock. You might as well have flown to Greece or somewhere. You've gone forward. You put your clock forward 3 hours or whatever. And then suddenly you want to go to bed early on Sunday and then get up early on Monday, and it doesn't work. So if you're doing what you described on a regular basis and you're sleeping badly, then that's something that absolutely needs to be addressed. And there's a phrase for it, as I say, it's called
social jet lag. That makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, thank you. That's
students.
One question. Students, yeah. Gosh. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was rest. So are you saying that if you are totally knackered, you've really not had any time to rest in the week, I would have thought, well, you're going to sleep almost better because you're so knackered. Are you saying that actually if you've not been taking the time to rest, the quality of your sleep is worse, or you don't get to sleep as easily, or you're going to wake up earlier in the morning?
Yes, it's a complex answer. Helping people to sleep better can involve deliberate sleep deprivation. So one of the most common ways of treating people, and I don't think it's necessarily the be all and end all, is sleep restriction. Actually, that's the phrase. So we can improve the quality, or the technical term is the efficiency of our sleep by restricting our sleep, and then we sleep better. So to a degree that we can use that, but what is bad is when we enormously vary what we do, for example, during the week as compared to the weekend. If that's a regular pattern, that's not good. There are various myths at play out there. I've mentioned one that I bought into is that you can have these power naps. Another myth is that you can catch up with lost sleep at the weekend. And maybe to a degree you can, but you once sleep's lost, it's lost, and you pay a price for it. So yeah, if you get yourself exhausted during the week, well, yes, you probably will sleep well. We have Rebound REM. We're programmed, if you like, to get a certain amount of REM sleep, and if we deprive ourselves of sleep, then we sort of catch up with it. So there's a degree of catching up, which is an interesting subject, because a lot of people, it's really important for people to understand that whole concept of REM rebound. A lot of people take substances to sleep well, or so they think. They actually to sedate themselves. And I like to point out that there's a big difference between sedation and good sleep. And when they're sedated with substances, cannabis, alcohol, whatever it may be, they're not getting the REM sleep that they need. And then, so when they stop taking the alcohol or cannabis, they have a REM rebound, and then they have these vivid dreams, and then they have these nightmares, and then they'll think, oh my goodness, I need the cannabis, I need the alcohol to stop these terrible nightmares, which is what I have certainly seen repeatedly in the clinics. So sleep restriction has its place, but it's not something that's good when it's uneven, as it were.
So are we saying then that REM sleep is literally the holy grail of sleeping? That's what we're really trying to get as much of as possible?
No.
Oh, okay. I always believed that, because when I had some sleep tracker on, I was like, I was pretty low on REM, but high on the other things. But okay, what type of sleep are we aiming for then?
What we want is a nice, good cycle. We want a good cycle. We want the four phases of sleep. We want light sleep. We want deep sleep, and we want to come out of deep sleep with REM sleep. And you referenced creativity and the benefits to our emotional well-being during REM sleep. That's massive. But during deep sleep, where we're out of it, there's a lot of restoration going, a lot of muscle rebuilding. I think I'm right in saying that there's a surge in growth hormone during sleep in general, but during deep sleep, a lot of muscle repair takes place. A lot of, just mentioned the benefits of sleep, muscle repair. Athletes are much more likely to have accidents, to have injuries, if they don't sleep. So, and there's various things there. There's muscle repair, there's coordination. Talking of being poorly coordinated, when we're sleep deprived, we might as well be intoxicated with alcohol. And that's something to remember when you've got doctors that have been working really long shifts. Mental ability and coordination is impaired by poor sleep, just in the same way as it is with alcohol. But no, so yeah, we want REM sleep, we want deep sleep, and we want the light sleep. And actually understanding what light sleep has been for me and for many people a game changer as well. Recognizing that light sleep is on the edge of consciousness. because a lot of people are in light sleep and they're cognizant, they're thinking things, and that what they can be thinking is, oh no, I'm not sleeping, when actually they're in light sleep.
So when all night you think, I just haven't slept a wink all night, you probably, without being like, ding, I'm awake, but actually it's likely that for quite a lot of that, if you haven't been like just looking around and thinking, should I get up or not? But you've just been conscious, you've been thinking all night, that might be because you've been in light sleep, not because you've actually been awake.
Yes. There's two conditions that are worth thinking about in relation to insomnia. And you've mentioned sleep tracking, and we could bring sleep tracking into this. There's orthosomnia and paradoxical insomnia. Now, I absolutely remember I can think of one particular case of what we call paradoxical insomnia, where somebody believes themselves to have slept badly, and they have in fact slept a whole lot better. I just remember being on the ward. It's my very first house job, and I remember somebody snoring heavily on the ward. I was working during the night, and then on the ward round in the morning, he just told me how badly he had slept, and I thought, no, you didn't. and so, yeah, we don't remember how well we sleep, and that's one thing. But also, a lot of sleep is light sleep, and so if we're anxious about not sleeping, we can be remembering when we were in light sleep, thinking we were not sleeping, and then counting that as poor sleep. So that's one of the benefits. There's pros and cons of sleep trackers. So I've mentioned paradoxical insomnia. The value of a sleep tracker can be, and I've really benefited from this myself in the past, is whether it's on a phone or a watch. One of the benefits is looking back and thinking, oh my goodness, the night wasn't half as bad as I thought it was. And that happens so often. So it's good to track your sleep. But when you start looking at it when you wake up in the morning and think, oh no, I didn't have enough sleep, I didn't have enough REM, I had too much of this, too little of that, then the whole obsession with sleep, which is what a lot of people get, particularly with sleep trackers, is in itself a cause of sleep anxiety and insomnia. So I've heard a number of people, one person in particular, a sleep therapist, saying no to sleep trackers, but they have their place, but use them with care. I mean, I think the same goes with blood pressure monitors. People start getting really anxious about their blood pressures when they're checking their blood pressure.
Well, any sort of monitoring, right? It makes you more obsessed with the figures, and then you end up treating the figures and not the thing that's going on, and that makes sense. So, not a good idea to use sleep trackers unless you're sort of really needing it for a certain thing, perhaps, or if you're the sort of person that's going to get a bit obsessed by it and get worried by it, then
I'd say it's often got a place, actually, because I think there's a lot of people who can be reassured by it, but what you've just got to do it, use it with care.
And it gives you good data, doesn't it? Because you can see how alcohol would affect your REM sleep or things like that. And that was one of my big disappointing discoveries. It's just the effect of alcohol on your sleep. And that's the one thing that's made me cut right down, because even just after 1 unit, 2 units, your sleep is really disrupted, which is so depressing, isn't it?
It is. But, and of course, there are people who will use the alcohol to get to sleep. But even people who don't have an issue with alcohol, as you say, have got to be aware that they're going to knock their REM, as you say, even with a small amount. Well, that's another reason for eating early. Okay, we mentioned sleep hygiene. Go backtrack to sleep hygiene. Eating suppresses melatonin. So if we're eating a big meal late in the evening and having a drink with it, then let's not expect to have the best night's sleep, let alone the dyspepsia we might be having.
It did make me laugh when I read Matthew Walker's book about why we sleep. The one piece of advice they gave about alcohol, they said, well, we can't in any good conscience say that it's okay to drink alcohol for sleep, but we can say that if you're going to drink alcohol, drink it at 9 o'clock in the morning, because it'll be out of your system by the night. I'm thinking, So we've got these different types of insomnia. We've talked a little bit about sleep hygiene. One of the reasons I think people get difficulty sleeping, or that the reason I find difficulty sleeping, is when you're suddenly waking up worrying about stuff. And that does interfere with my sleep sometimes. But now you've mentioned the sleep anxiety, I'm wondering whether it all sort of interacts and intermingles. So what do you think? Actual anxiety is a more common sleep blocker than sleep anxiety, or do you think sleep anxiety has an even bigger role than we thought?
Well, they're all interrelated. One thing I would say is that recovery from sleep, and I use that word recovery because I liken it almost to drug and alcohol recovery, it's a journey, and it's not a quick fix. I've heard you talking. I heard you talking once about the fact that you help people manage stress, but there was a time when you were talking about how you were drifting into stress yourself, and we can know all the answers, but it happens to us all. And for me, routine is a really big deal. When I've lost my routine and then life is frantic, I've got lots of things on my mind. They may not necessarily be bad things. Actually, they may just be busy things. A lot of things I'm thinking about, planning. When I'm frantic, I'd say it's being frantic is a massive issue, whether or not it's things you're actually anxious about. But yes, it's an interplay. So you could be anxious about whatever it is, your health, your relationships, finances, whatever it may be. And so of course that's going to be a big deal. So that's why I like to say the fight for the night is fought in the day. Let's make time in the day to manage our anxieties, so that when we wake up in the night, we can think, yeah, I've parked that one. And I'll tell you one massive game changer for me. And this isn't, I came across it and I hadn't a while back, and I've not heard anybody else say this, is during the night when you're asleep, your prefrontal cortex activity is suppressed. And I thought, wow, that's such a big deal. Because again, you talk about chimp brain and human brain. Well, our human brain goes to sleep before our chimp brain does. And do we need to talk about what that means? I think probably a lot of people know that, but our limbic system, our amygdalas are much busier than our thinking brains during the night.
So that's our threat detection system. So the thing that's going to make you feel anxious and worried and detect threats all over the place. So that's what you're talking about. We talk about the chimp brain, the amygdala versus the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational side of things.
So again, when you're lying awake and you can rationalize, when you've got enough consciousness to think, right, I'm anxious, I'm thinking about this stuff, but I've done this now and it really helps. I think, right, I'm not in a good place to think about whatever it might be, this meeting that's coming up, because I'm not using my prefrontal cortex. And I've been able to do that in light sleep and think, right, I'm going to park it, leave it for tomorrow. Takes a lot of practice. That's where learning to be mindful comes in, I believe. But a massive interplay between anxiety, sleep anxiety. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's a two-way street. Good mental health, poor mental health, and insomnia are a two-way street. One causes the other, both directions. So I mentioned it in relation to depression earlier on, but of course, exactly the same applies to anxiety. I was in India and I saw this man with a T-shirt. It just said, in the daytime, I don't believe in ghosts. At nighttime, I'm more open-minded. I thought, yes, that's exactly
Love it. Or we start just completely catastrophizing and worrying about stuff and I think sometimes your brain just even looks around for things to worry about, which is quite uncanny, isn't it? That's why it's useful to keep like a piece of paper by your bed. So I was thinking, well, I'm just going to write it down and I'll make sure I worry about that tomorrow. So don't worry, inner chimp or amygdala. I will worry about that tomorrow. And then tomorrow I'm like, oh, that's not important. But I think that's useful because we worry, then we worry about the worry, and then we worry about not sleeping, and then we get ourselves mixed up in a right old muddle. And I guess that's part of the problem with sleep anxiety. So we worry about not sleeping, and then we worry about worrying about not sleeping. Before you know it, you've got a million worries all over the fact that, yeah, you might not have enough sleep for tomorrow, or you might miss your alarm or something like that. What can we do if like me, you've got to suddenly get up really early because you've got keynote talk, or you're going to miss a plane, or, so you've got less sleep than normal. You've got an early deadline and you lie awake all night. Or the second one, I guess, is for somebody that has had a lot of trouble sleeping in their lives, and then it just becomes a chronic, oh gosh, am I going to get to sleep tonight? How am I sleeping? All that sort of stuff. So do you manage those in two completely different ways, or is it the same sort of thing either way?
Yeah, I think you manage things together, and I think we've got to talk about people who have chronic insomnia versus people for whom it's just an intermittent problem. One thing that's really helpful to recognize is that actually it's not the end of the day if you don't really sleep particularly well. We can function. I mean, I remember one of my worst nights, actually this is before I was working as a junior doctor, so maybe this is a medical student. I remember the day before my pediatrics exam, and I just had this sudden thought at 8 p.m. that I don't know anything about pediatrics, and I literally stayed awake all night. I was up reading pediatrics textbook. Stupid. I mean, it just, but I thought I've got to go through it. But yeah, the exam went fine. And the point being that if it's an occasional bad meeting, occasional meeting, and we're thinking, I've got to go to sleep well for that meeting tomorrow, we can also tell ourselves, well, even if I don't, it's not going to be the end of the world. But that's for the occasional bout of insomnia. For the chronic insomniac, it's different. We need to be more, we need to be more purposeful in managing that on a daily basis, I'd say.
So what sort of techniques would you be recommending to people for that sort of thing?
I have a 4-step approach. We've talked a bit about the sleep science, and I think understanding sleep science is important. We've talked about sleep hygiene, and that's another key thing, and then rhythm, and then what we massively need to do, having done the other things arguably first, is to work on what I call having a sleep mindset. What I think is massive, absolute game changer, is something called, it's a more modern therapy. It's called acceptance and commitment therapy. And when we spoke, I think it was May last year, so it's coming up to a year ago, we talked a bit about accepting the things that we can't control, having the courage to change the things that we can. And that's such a massive, massive part of my journey, and those that I've helped to come to a better place in terms of life in general, but in terms of sleeping better in particular. Learning to relax about the things that I don't have any control over. I don't have, nor do you, nor does anybody listening to this. Generally speaking, we do not have the ability to say, all right, I'm going to lie down now and go to sleep, unless you're totally exhausted. You can't choose to go to sleep I'm going to go to sleep at 10:30 p.m. tonight. It's not within my skill set. And so if I learn to accept that and don't fight against that desire to go to sleep, I've got to fall asleep. If I don't fall asleep, I'm going to be so tired. If I learn to accept that I can't control that, but what I can do is I can control the things that are within my skill set, are what we talked about in terms of our sleep environment and how much caffeine we drink and so on. And then I can control what I choose to think about, and I can control how much rest I take. Then sleep probably will follow.
And so is there any other way that ACT therapy helps? Because I think I love ACT therapy, and when I've sort of heard about it before, I think I've read a couple of books about it. One of the things that has been really powerful for me is being able to choose the thoughts that you latch onto. So sort of accepting the thoughts that's there, and either just and trying to detach yourself from, I'm noticing I'm having the thought, or I am thinking, rather than, or I am stressed, or I'm thinking I'm stressed. I'm noticing I'm having the thought I'm stressed, therefore that you sort of distancing yourself each time.
Absolutely.
What particular distancing things have you found have helped you when it comes to the sleep anxiety? What's the sort of changing in the thinking that's helped?
There are a couple of things, and the first thing you've mentioned is massive. As soon as we say to ourselves, "Oh, I'm having an anxious thought," "Oh, I can feel my heart beating," "I can feel the tension in my neck," or whatever it is. As soon as we describe what's going on, we have distanced ourselves to some degree. So, and the phrase that I love is not being at the mercy of that thought. So choosing to notice it rather than be at the mercy of it. So that's one part of that's a big part of acceptance and commitment therapy. For those that are not familiar with it, it's a therapy that was devised by somebody called Stephen Hayes in the 1980s. So it's really relatively recent. I mean, I feel it's based on ancient wisdom, but a big part of it is just learning to be mindful, be observant. And the other thing is what Stephen Hayes and his successors have really helped us to do is to recognize that the things that we worry about don't actually have the power that we think they do. So what ACT therapists do is they encourage us to see our anxieties as monsters. sleep monsters, whatever it is, and that has been really helpful. So see it as a monster or that can't actually hurt you. It's like a dog that's barking. It's really a really scary dog, but it's on a lead. It's chained, and so it can bark really loudly, but it can't actually you can't bite you. And if you start thinking, yeah, that dog or that monster, it's keeping me awake, but it can't hurt me. And if I focus on it, if I bark back at the dog or the monster, it'll bark back even louder, and then I'm on a downward spiral. And some people recognize that, okay, I'll thank my amygdala because it's trying to help me. Our amygdalas are lifesavers, aren't they? In the right circumstances, you're crossing a field and a bull's chasing you. Thank God for the amygdala, which then releases the adrenaline, which causes the adrenaline to come up, which means you escape from the bull. But we don't want its help at nighttime, and so we can thank the amygdala if we want to, and then just sort of diffuse the power of that sleep monster. So I think it's a silly picture, but I don't mean it's silly. It sounds a bit inane, but it actually works to see your anxiety as a monster that can't actually hurt you.
And the fact that if you engage with that dog, the anxiety or the monster, that actually it just gets louder and louder and louder. You just got to ignore it. It's fascinating, this sleep mindset stuff. Have there been any sort of quick hacks that have really helped you? Any sort of mantras or quick shifts that have helped you with that sleep mindset and to get rid of your sleep anxiety?
I mean, there are some quick fixes, and one is to believe that you can do it. I mean, what I say to people, to anybody who has insomnia, I'll say there probably was a day when you slept like a baby. Nobody had to teach you how to sleep when you were a baby. So you can sleep. So many people, I've heard so many people tell me, I can't sleep. I'm deficient in something. My brain doesn't produce melatonin, whatever it may be. They think a lot of people truly believe they've got a physical cause for their insomnia. And you say, no, you've got what you need, and you once slept like a baby, and to learn to believe that you can sleep like a baby again. That's maybe sometimes we can have breakthroughs. Absolutely, we can have breakthroughs and we learn how to manage certain issues. But I think what I would encourage people who've got chronic insomnia, and when we say chronic insomnia, we mean insomnia that's persisted for more than 3 days a week for more than 3 months. I'd say, well, see it as a journey. And another little metaphor which I think is really helpful, is somebody paddling on a boat on a river where everything's lovely and the trees are green, the sky is blue, the birds singing. It's all very nice. You're in this paddle boat, and behind you is a waterfall. And if you stop paddling, you will be slowly dragged back into the waterfall. So for me and for people that I've helped, I encourage just to see it as a journey. You got to keep paddling. And it's very similar to people maybe who have got tendency towards an addictive behavior or substance, whatever. It's not that there aren't many quick fixes.
So how many people do actually have a medical condition that means they can't sleep? What percentage of everyone with insomnia will find out that there is a sort of physical medical reason for it? Is it just tiny percentage?
Yeah, it's relatively small, but there are a bunch of sleep disorders, and there will probably be people listening to this who've got physical issues. Now, there's obstructive sleep apnea, and that's a physical issue which is really significant, and it's often not diagnosed. Is it 2% of women, 4% of males, and increased with people with obesity? So that's not an insignificant number of people have, and there is a physical cause. There's intermittent sort of partial collapsing of the airways, which causes intermittent choking and having snoring, which then wakes the person up. Sometimes they don't really realize that they've woken up, and then they fall asleep again, but they've had significant impairment of the normal sleep rhythm. There's restless leg syndrome, whether that's truly a physical issue, that the sleep movement disorders, and that affects a lot of people, and that's up to 10% of people actually. Sometimes for them there's iron deficiency, which is a factor, and then there are circadian rhythm disorders, whether that's a physical cause, but it's a recognized issue. There's narcolepsy. There's various other sleep disorders. But the biggest problem with sleep that causes so much distress is insomnia, and perhaps the single most important factor is sleep anxiety.
And I guess that's good news, isn't it? Because that means that we can overcome it. That means it can get better. It's a journey. Just because you don't sleep well now doesn't mean you're never going to be able to. But it's going to take a bit of time, going to take a bit of effort. And I guess it's like everything. Wouldn't it be great if there was just a pill you could take and totally cure it? Unfortunately, with sleeping, the pills often make it worse, don't they? Or they cause extra problems. But like you said, it's a journey. It takes work. But the great news is you're in control of it. If it's to do with the way we're thinking and what's in our mind, then there are things we can do.
Yeah, and actually you asked about physical causes of insomnia. What I didn't think to say is, there's a lot of people who've got secondary insomnia. So insomnia there's different ways of categorizing it. And one way is primary versus secondary. And secondary is secondary to what may be a physical or a secondary, physical or a mental primary cause. So, we've talked a lot about the mental health issues that may be the underlying cause for insomnia. But of course, there's a lot of people who can't sleep because of pain, genuine pain. And so the clinic I'm working in at the moment in London is for people who have ended up on high doses of prescribed opiates and benzodiazepines. And so they will attribute their poor sleep to their backache, their sciatica, their post-operative pain, whatever it may be. And that probably is a factor. But actually, it always invariably becomes compounded and it becomes a mixed picture. And so the anxiety aggravates the pain and very often, even though there may be some genuine underlying pain that's coming into play, if we can deal with the mindset, then we can make things a whole lot more tolerable. And of course, a big part of pain management is the mindset as well.
I know you've sort of mentioned mindfulness earlier on, but that's a huge part of pain management as well. And I can imagine it's part of sleep management and everything like that. So just yet another reason why meditation, that sort of thing can be really helpful. Steve, there's so much we could talk about with this. And in a minute, I know you've got a course that you've done. So anybody who wants to dig in deeper to this will be able to do this course and find out more and really hear some of your tips and techniques in much greater detail. Could you just share what was your top 3 things? If someone came to you and they said, right, well, I'm struggling, I can't really find a cause, I'm not really in any pain, I don't think I've got a physical thing, but it's just getting worse. What would the basics be? What would you say? Okay, these 3 things, just go and have a look at now.
The number 1 and 2 is to pray. Whether or not you believe anybody's listening, still pray the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity, and we talked about this, to accept the things I cannot control. That's number 1. Accept the things I cannot control. I cannot control my insomnia. Accept it. Don't fight it. Number 2, courage to change the things I can. And again, that's massive. And I guess what I was going to say for number 3 really comes under number 2, but I'm going to say it anyway, is really work on a healthy routine. I love this expression. Somebody said, put your phone to bed. Parent your phone. We those of us that have had kids, we like to put our kids to bed at an early time so that we can then enjoy the rest of the evening whilst they're asleep. Well, put your phone to sleep, leave it in another room.
That is my number 1 sleep tip. Whenever we do any training, it's like, because you check your phone, and the main problem is everyone uses their phone as an alarm clock. And this is probably part of the reason why I can't sleep when I go away, because of course I don't take my alarm clock, so I use my phone. But then what do you do before the minute you're just about to go to sleep? You check that you've set your alarm on your phone. And while you're there, you check your texts, you check your messages, and you think, well, while I'm here, I'll just check my emails. And what am I doing tomorrow? You check your diary. And before you know it, you've done half an hour more of work. So forget the blue light, forget anything. It just intrudes it makes work and everything else that you get obsessed with and distracted by intrude into everything. And so no wonder you can't sleep, because your brain is going. And even at home, when I've maybe got my phone next to my bed, because maybe one of my teenagers is out really late and I think, well, I can't put my phone down, so I need to be able to hear it if they're in trouble. I find myself scrolling on it, even when I know it's just stupid. It's so annoying. So I think number 1 tip, and honestly, I have bought myself an alarm clock, and it's a digital one because I hate ticking, from Amazon. It costs like 20 quid. It's honestly the best buy ever. And it's really reliable. The alarm never doesn't go off and all that. So it's, honestly, top tip, I think, Steve. That's absolutely
Can
brilliant.
I just add to that, actually? I have what I call a Sabbath phone, because Sabbath doesn't have to be anything religious. It's just means having a rest. Have a rest once a week. Have a digital Sabbath. But we goodness me, I like listening to music, so I need my phone for Spotify, and then I like to do meditations, and I use the phone for that. Well, have a phone that doesn't have your email, your Facebook and everything else, a separate phone that you use when you're off duty.
Even better, I'm looking around my desk. Oh, it's over there. I've got this thing called a brick, which I haven't used yet. Have you heard about the brick?
Well, I've heard of people referring to their second phone as a brick.
This is an actual brick. And hang on, I'm just going to get it. Wait a sec. Can I just say, I have no financial interest in the brick company, but my friends told me about this. And it comes in a little box. You stick it on your fridge. And what the brick does, you download the app onto your phone, and it turns your phone into a brick phone, into a Nokia phone, or you can choose what apps you want it to access and what it blocks. But if you want to unlock it, you literally have to go and tap your phone on the brick to unlock it. So it turns your smartphone into a brick, or whatever you want. So you could leave Spotify on it, for example.
Yes,
and everything that you need. And you can choose. You don't have to have everything off your phone. But I thought that was absolute genius idea. So yeah, I have to set that up. Anyway, Steve, it's been wonderful to have you with us. If people want to find more about you and more about your sleep course and everything else that you do, where can they find you? Where's the best place to go?
So I've set up a website. It's called fightforthenight.com, and I've got a sleep course on there, which is expanding really all the things that we've been talking about. And I'm delighted to be able to offer, I think it's really, really very well priced anyway, but for anybody who follows your podcast, we've got a code, which is FROG20, which gives you a 20% discount.
So do check that out. Use that code as a discount. I think, if you struggle with sleep, then get on and do this course. It's part of the courage to change the things that you can. Get yourself educated, get a book, read the Matthew Walker Why We Sleep book and all that sort of stuff. Steve, thank you so much for being here, and be good to chat again soon at some point. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.